Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Cloud Gaming Report, your source for cloud gaming news. So in this week's episode, we have some very interesting news. EA has acquired Gamefly's cloud gaming streaming technology. Eat Shadow has reduced pricing for their cloud gaming platform, and Resident Evil 7 is coming to the Switch via game streaming. So a lot of interesting things to talk about this week, guys. So let's go ahead and get right to it. Alright, so the first topic for this week's episode is the fact that Capcom is bringing Resident Evil 7 to the Switch via game streaming technologies. So the way this works is you have a local application that essentially just launches a remote connection to a game server that is streaming Resident Evil 7. This works very similar to if you've used GeForce Now or watched one of my videos on GeForce Now, where the local client just launches a game in a window and you don't really have direct control or really ever even see the Windows environment for the most part. So this should be a very simple and very user-friendly method. The big downside I see with something like this is if every game developer starts adopting this, there'll be a lot of people that have no experience with game streaming technologies. Their streaming technologies might not be super low latency, might have rough edges, whereas with like a service like GeForce Now or Shadow or Parsec, you have guys who have been dedicating a lot of time and focusing on game streaming, so the experience should be a lot better, much lower latency, and things along those lines. So there are going to be some downsides that I see with games and other programs adopting this in the future, but this does allow a very user-friendly option, and I could see this being very useful for more and more applications. For example, people that do video editing, it would be nice to just have a very lightweight program and you actually do all the processing power in the cloud. So I've actually am traveling right now for work, and I was trying to edit a video that I recorded off of my phone, and it happens that my phone is recording in 4K. So I have an older laptop that I have with me, and it cannot edit 4K footage at all. So it'd be nice to have like a lightweight application that could connect to the cloud, and I could edit the 4K footage by using the power of the cloud computing to process all that heavy data. Of course, you would have to get all that data to the Adobe servers or something along those lines, but it would be nice if we had something along those lines. So I definitely see the draw to having applications essentially go to a cloud server, and all the computation is done on that server and it is streamed back to you. But the main thing I was seeing, or the main thought that I had that was a negative in this, is the fact that you have a lot of people that don't have experience with cloud game streaming, which is more latency dependent, because we've had streaming technologies for a long time through like RDP, where you can remotely connect, TeamViewer and other applications. But in those applications, latency wasn't as big of a focus. But with gaming, latency is a very big focus, as it can greatly make your experience much more negative. So it'd be interesting to see how this turns out. It looks like there are other games that have done a similar form of cloud game streaming before. This article mentions Final Fantasy 13 and Phantasy Star Online 2 for the Switch actually works the exact same way as Resident Evil 7. So it'll be interesting to see exactly how this performs and how well Capcom's game streaming technology actually works. Alright, so moving on to the next major topic for this week's episode, we have Shadow reducing the pricing of their cloud gaming service, or rather, to be more accurate, they are eliminating the contracts from their service and giving everybody the lowest price tier that you could have gotten by signing a 12-month commitment. So previous to this pricing change, if you were going to choose the month-to-month plan, you were paying essentially $50 per month. They did have two different contract links that you could commit to save money though. The 3-month commitment saved you $10 per month, bringing your total to $40 per month. They also had a 12-month commitment that saved you an additional $5, bringing the total price in monthly terms down to $35 per month. So essentially now everybody gets the $35 pricing because there are no commitments anymore. And this is great news simply because signing a long-term commitment isn't a great idea in this industry because it is evolving so rapidly. Shadow is a great application right now. It runs very good, but at the pace that we are evolving in cloud gaming, I wouldn't really recommend anybody to sign a 12-month commitment to a service, simply because 12 months is a long time. An entire year, we've seen a lot of progression in the world of cloud gaming. Parsec has had a lot of updates. We've seen Shadow come to the US. So if you had signed a 12-month commitment with Liquid Sky, for example, then you could have had Shadow or possibly even GeForce Now launch in that time, which have a lot more power. So if you are looking to have maxed out graphics and you are a hardcore gamer, those could be much cheaper options. So that's why I was personally against a 12-month commitment, and I personally recommended the 3-month commitment if anybody asked me which one I would prefer and which one I would recommend, because you are saving $10 per month, so there is a very good price savings there, but it is a short enough term commitment that you can save some money, but you're not tied into the service for a long time. But now we have the best of both worlds, where everybody gets the charge of $35 per month, or once again, to be more accurate, $34.95, because everybody likes to take 5 cents off to make it seem like it's a little bit cheaper. So all in all, a very good move for Shadow. I am a huge supporter of this move. Just simply means cheaper cloud gaming, especially if you're a hardcore gamer. This continues to push Shadow as an option for like people that you game around 50 hours per month. It becomes cheaper than a hourly service. So if you're right on that border, it might be better to go to a service like Shadow, simply because it is unlimited, and you can still use a application like Parsec if you want to do co-play. So while it doesn't natively, you can't purchase Shadow through Parsec like you can with Paperspace and AWS, you can still use the great application Parsec if you want to use cooperative play with multiple people on your cloud gaming server. So all in all, a very good announcement. It does look like it is at this point in time only in the US and the UK. It doesn't look like it is a worldwide change. So France and other countries that Shadow is currently servicing are still seeing the different tiers of pricing, but in the US and the UK, it looks like they have been reduced down to the lowest cost pricing. So to wrap up this week's episode, we have the rather interesting news that EA has purchased Gamefly's cloud streaming technology. So this is a rather fuzzy announcement, as a lot of details were not announced. We do know that EA has purchased the development team behind Gamefly streaming, and they purchased the technology itself, the rights to the technology. They did not purchase Gamefly as a whole, and they did not purchase the Gamefly streaming platform. So Gamefly still owns their streaming platform, but they no longer have their development team behind the platform, and it's unclear at this point in time if Gamefly still owns the rights to the technology and EA just has the rights at the same time, like if they have shared rights, or if EA has purchased the rights in entirety and Gamefly streaming is going to stop as a service. I did not see any announcement on the Gamefly streaming website, but this is actually a service that I did not know existed at all. I did use Gamefly back in the day, and just to give a reference to how long ago that was during the Xbox 360 era. I had used it to rent games simply because there's a lot of games I wanted to play, but I couldn't justify $60 for, simply because they weren't on my favorite game list. I didn't want to replay them in the future, but I just wanted to try out the single player campaign or something along those lines, so I could rent them for a month, much cheaper than having to purchase them outright for $60. I kind of just assumed that Gamefly has kind of faded away because a lot of people are moving towards purchasing their games digitally. But it does seem like they still do operate the disc-based service, and they kind of went the route of what Netflix is doing and focusing kind of on the streaming world too. And I did not know that they had Gamefly streaming at all. So where this announcement is so fuzzy is the fact that it does look like Gamefly streaming is going to continue to exist, and that they are sharing the technology, like they both have shared access to the technology. It just EA has purchased the development team, and that's where it gets kind of interesting. Is Gamefly going to rehire devs? And if the entire development team is no longer part of the company, you're going to have people just starting off like they have no idea what they're doing because they're looking at other people's code. You have no senior member to kind of walking you through, so it's not really exactly clear what the future of Gamefly streaming is. but we do know for sure that EA has purchased the technology as well as acquired all the talent from the development team that is based in Israel. So it does look like EA is trying to dial into the world of cloud game streaming. And this isn't too far from what we see with Capcom and the recent announcement that I talked about earlier in this episode about them offering Resident Evil 7 via the cloud. So, very interesting news and all. It'd be very interesting to see what comes from this. It could be quite a while before we actually see an announcement straight from EA on exactly what they're doing. But I could imagine this being a Origin Access type platform, or maybe you pay a little bit more than what you're paying for Origin Access now, but you don't have to have a beefy computer. You can play from your tablet, possibly even your phone, and a low-end computer device. So rather than just having access to a game catalog, you have access to a cloud gaming computer that can do all the processing power, and all you really need is a good internet connection. So that's a wrap for this week's episode of the Cloud Gaming Report. I hope you guys found this episode both enjoyable as well as informative. There was a lot of interesting topics we talked about, and I'm very interested to see what comes from EA in the near future. And hopefully we might get some clarifications next week on exactly what's going on with Gamefly and if it's going to continue to exist. So all in all, a lot of interesting news. I would be interested to hear from people that are in Japan, if I have any people that are living in Japan that watch my channel or listen to this podcast, to see if they have tried out the Resident Evil 7 on the Switch, how it performs. So just be interested in some feedback and what people are actually experiencing there. So that's like I said, a wrap for this week's episode, guys. I hope you liked it. If you did, give this video a big like if you're on YouTube, or give it a heart, or however you show your love on your podcast app of choice. Once again, guys, thanks for watching, and until next time, Zach out.